My name is Mauricio Salatino. I'm also known as Salaboy in the community. And I'm in charge of the Activiti and Activiti Cloud initiatives. We are doing a lot of interesting stuff in there. I'm in charge of the open source project, not the enterprise products from Alfresco, so I'm the community kind of leader there. And I'm here with Ryan Dawson as well, and with Francesco and Marcello as well, that we are both located here in the London office. So if you are using these projects, or if you are interested in these kind of things, please get in touch. We are quite close here, and we are very, very open to meet people in general, because the more people that we meet, the more refined our tools are going to be. So this presentation, it's a little bit about what we are doing. I've joined Alfresco a year ago, and I come with a very strong like BPM and rule engine background, like very on the business automation side of things. And what we are doing with the Activiti project, we are just basically going to the cloud. We are going to this big transition from being, a process engine to something a little bit more, just following what people is doing in the cloud and making sure that we are following the technologies and the paradigms that people is generally adopting. So this presentation, it's all about what we are doing. Please don't be scared. Remember that this is the open source side of it. So even though if you might not adopt this right away, we are just working on the things that are going to come in the next couple of years. We want to make sure that we align with all that stuff, so when you look at these technologies, we already have all the building blocks ready for you to start using. So during this presentation, I will talk a little bit about cloud-native applications, just briefly. I will touch on why we chose Kubernetes as our main deployment platform, and as our main target for designing all the things that we are designing right now. And then going a little bit in detail about our infrastructure, what building blocks are we creating, and why. Before I start, again, just a little bit about myself. I'm just on that BPM guy on the Java side, very backend and distributed architecture as well. In charge of this open source project, it's a big responsibility. We are meeting a lot of customers, a lot of people from the community that is using these projects, and they all realize that we need to move forward. We need to go to cloud technologies, and we need to redesign tons of things related with the engine. And for that, we are just doing all this work. We need to make sure that we do not reinvent anything. So basically, we are very focused on building things related to business automation for the cloud, but we don't want to reinvent any technology that is out there that you probably want to swap out. So we are collaborating with other open source communities, making sure that we collaborate in order to provide these building blocks instead of reinvent our own message brokers or abstractions for message brokers. Something that I wanted to mention before moving forward is that next week we are going to be in the London Microservices Meetup, and we will be talking about cloud technologies and cloud-native applications, Spring, Kubernetes, Spring Cloud, and Docker, and containers, and these kind of things. Feel free to pop in if you are interested in these topics. This is more like a high-level introduction about what we are doing today. So, because we are doing a lot of changes, and I will be talking a little bit about these changes from the Activiti point of view. First of all, it would be really interesting to know who knows Activiti here. Okay, who is using Activiti today? Some of the guys on the back, yeah, good. You cannot say yes. You are not using it. So Activiti is a business process engine. It was designed as a process engine, so the main idea behind it was to provide these workflow capabilities for Java applications, and you were used to consume this also as a service. So basically, you can call a web service endpoint and just get the results from the execution of these workflows. Nowadays, people want to do this in the cloud, but process engines were designed way back, and Java process engines were designed 20 years ago, where cloud infrastructure didn't exist. So the patterns that were used in these projects are a little bit old-fashioned, and it really depends on the use cases that you're looking for. But if you really want to scale, if you want to globally scale, you need to change some of those things. Because of that, we are looking into the cloud-native paradigm shift in general of people using Kubernetes, using containers, and what does this mean? I mean, using containers, it doesn't mean that you just grab your whole application, put it inside a Docker image, and you just run it in AWS. That's going to solve some problems, but it's not going to, be designed for that platform. It will break a lot of things, and if you want to really scale, you definitely need to think about what do you put inside those Docker images and containers. In order to design these new things for these new infrastructures, we are looking into what people is calling nowadays cloud native applications, and we are just integrating most of our software against Spring and Spring Cloud frameworks that are the basic building blocks and the tools that we use to build cloud native applications. There are 4 books that are highly recommended about how to build microservices, what are the advantages of these infrastructures, how to create domain-driven designs, and how to do small and well-focused services that can scale to very large volumes. And we are using these technologies, Spring Cloud, Docker, and Kubernetes, again, as our main technology stack, and we are aiming to deploy, to provide you guys open source building blocks to build these kind of applications. We have changed a lot in the Activiti community. Even the logo, it's now different. But again, by choosing Kubernetes, is the main reason behind that is, first of all, that there are a lot of cloud providers nowadays using Kubernetes as their main abstraction layer. So if you want to go to the Google Cloud Engine, or if you want to go to Red Hat, Pivotal, or even Amazon nowadays is providing Kubernetes services, we use Kubernetes as our abstraction layer. From the technology point of view, we are Java developers. We want to deploy services for these infrastructures. And as soon as we know that we are targeting these platforms, we are going to build these services in a certain way. Again, if you are not looking into Kubernetes right now, this is something that the industry is pushing really, really hard. And at some point, you will be looking into this. So you need to be prepared for that. And even if we realize that not everybody is looking at these things, we recognize that we need to be ready for when you are ready. So we want to make sure that we have our building blocks already there for you to use whenever you are ready. Remember that also Kubernetes gives you the possibility to run on-premise, so it means that if you don't want to go to the public cloud because you have data that is sensible or some regulations that doesn't allow you to do that, using Kubernetes for on-premise deployment is beneficial because, again, the design, the scalability, and then moving to the public cloud, it should be fairly easy, fairly transparent. And again, with the adoption, wide adoption from most of cloud providers, this is becoming kind of like the de facto way of going to the cloud. How many of you guys are looking into Kubernetes nowadays? Okay, let's say half? Less than half. Okay, so we recognize that there is a lot of, that's the other thing that we are noticing, like there are a lot of customers looking into it. But when you start looking into it, you start realizing that there are a lot of things that you need to learn in order to go in that direction. It's not like a simple trip that you said, okay, I will just go into Kubernetes and I will just use it and everything will work. So you need to start thinking about how to design applications for it. And that's the journey that we are doing now. And because we are an open source project, we want to make sure that we share that with our community. So even if you are not interested in Activiti by its own, because you are not interested in the workflow side of it, you can take a look at what we are building because we are just providing an example of what a cloud native application is and how you should design these cloud native building blocks. Yeah, I'm going quite fast, but the main idea in Activiti Cloud is that we are going to provide, again, these building blocks, and these building blocks are going to run inside Kubernetes. Each of these building blocks is going to be probably a container or a set of containers. From the Activiti Cloud point of view, we are defining some kind of infrastructure, and this is extremely related with the things that Mario was presenting before about the digital business platform. And this is definitely come together with the plans in Alfresco to build our enterprise offerings into the public cloud. And how do we provide this as a set of services that all works together in a coherent way? In order to do that, we have defined these building blocks, like a gateway, using single sign-on and identity management as a shared service. These things were mentioned by Mario, using service registries, configuration services, zip-keying for tracing and understanding what's happening into the infrastructure, the Elk stack to monitor and to get some insights about what's going on. And in the center, we have the Activiti Cloud applications, again, a set of services that is going to provide a very domain-specific thing. So if you are looking into automating review processes for your documents, or understanding how do you deal with patients in a hospital, you are going to create these kind of applications that are very domain-specific, and they define behavior and how to do different things in your daily work. So these pieces in Activiti Cloud, and if you are not familiar with Activiti or the previous infrastructure, it's a little bit more complex, but it's just much more cloud native. And then you can just pick and choose whatever you need based on the scenarios that you want to cover. Remember that the main reason of creating these services and all this infrastructure is to scale to a global level, when you need to make sure that you are cost effective and that you can scale independently, depending, the pieces that you want scaling, right? So if you have, a process or a review document, it doesn't make that much sense to scale it. But then if you have something else that it's just require much more processing, then you can scale that independently. With previous architectures, that was a little bit much more complicated, and it required like a lot of setup and a lot of previous analysis on what are the use cases that you plan to cover and how do you want to move forward. From the Activity Cloud application point of view, again, we have this main concept that it's called the runtime bundle, and if you used Activity before in a Java application, that the runtime bundle is the one that reflects that process engine concept that we had before, the one that executes these workflows. All the other pieces that are floating around, like query service, notification, audit service, and cloud connectors, are just ways to interact with the external world. If you are an application and you want to consume data about processes, you interact with the query service, for example. If you want to get push notifications, you interact with the notification service. And all of this is distributed, so you can scale it, you can just turn it off if you don't need it. If you want to save money and you don't want to execute that stuff, you just turn it off. And again, because this is being built for the cloud, you have an application that is consuming one automation, and you are using it that right now, or if you're not using it, you can shut it down, and the rest of the applications will keep working. It's also fault tolerant because these pieces can go down at any time, or they can be moved around the cluster to different computers, different virtual machines, and this is resilient. And as soon as the new instance appear, it will automatically connect to the infrastructure, and you will get that functionality back again. So we are extremely focused on building this. Again, we are changing the way that the previous team used to work in these projects. We are releasing every month. As Mario mentioned, we are just trying to follow like best practices on getting stuff out. So our current focus is to refine these building blocks and to make sure that you can start using this right away as soon as you start looking into Kubernetes, right? So if you start looking into Kubernetes, you will map your applications and your use cases into a different set of services. We want to provide you a set of services that you can say, okay, if I already map my scenarios, these services that we are providing can solve you some problems that you don't really need to code and you don't really want to maintain. By changing the way that we work, we also have this public roadmap, and it's community-driven. So if you are interested in these projects, you can get in touch. We have a couple of community members as well here that are collaborating with us, and they are implementing things for their own customers. But at the same time, they realize that by collaborating, they get a lot of insights of what's coming on in the future. And because of the technology stack, again, their customers are going to be looking into Kubernetes, meaning that the more that they know, the more that they interact with us, the easier their implementations it's going to be, right? So we are changing the release cadence. We are providing early access releases, and we are focused on trying to create a beta release in order to start getting like a lot of community feedback. We have been catching up with a lot of customers, and we do like daily stand-ups meetings that are open, and you can join us if you want to understand a little bit more about what's going on with the project, or you can take a look at our blogs and check what's happening during the week. One more thing that we wanted to do in the Activity project, that's something that it's not so common in the open source space, is to make sure that we have a continuous deployment approach, and this is kind of like a crazy idea, but something that we really need to have. It's basically a live demo that it's running all the time, so as soon as we release a new component, we just deploy it there, and we go through the same pain that everybody that it's implementing with our tools is going to go. So that's quite important. That's kind of like the goal for this year. We just want to get into that model where we can just keep testing our releases and suffering the same pain that our customers are suffering. Mostly because I've been in the BPM industry for the last 10 years, and every BPM product has the same problem. It's really nice when you create a simple project. After 2 years, maintenance and upgrading stuff, it gets quite hard. In the cloud, that's been solved by a lot of tools, and we just want to use those tools and follow the same patterns that other people is following. In order to do that, and funny enough, this is pure coincidence, we created a marketing kind of like campaign blueprint, and this is completely coincidence, but the main idea that we wanted to create for having this continuous deployment scenario is a scenario that where we can demonstrate performance, and also we can demonstrate scale. So basically what we are creating is trending topic campaigns, like monitor and for advertising products, and then trying to measure engagement from different audiences. And we wanted to make sure that we will have a high load, so we wanted to hook up into the Twitter global timeline, Instagram and Facebook timelines in order to get a lot of content, right? So basically what we are doing is we are ingesting, and for every tweet or every post in Instagram that we recognize, we are going to create a process instance. And that will really depend on what kind of marketing campaign are you creating for what product and in which country, the containers that are going to be started, and the amount of replicas that you need in order to support that use case. So in Activiti, usually what you do is you just define your business processes in here. So in here, what we are saying is we are going to have a process to deal with the content. In this case, let's say that it's a tweet, that it's coming, that it's related to a product. And we were going just to pick it up. We are going to see if this tweet matches with the campaign that we are creating. And we are going to process it. We want to do some cool things like sentiment analysis and say, okay, this is a positive comment about this product, or it's a negative one. And based on that rank, and based on that sentiment, we can just rank the user as a positive user related to this campaign. The user is engaged, and we can have like a ranking of users engaged with that. At the same time, because we are going to create these campaigns for monitoring different products or different things that are happening or different trending topics in general, we also want to define a business process that says, okay, when we want to reward these users that are engaged with this campaign, what do? We just need to see how many users do we want to reward, what's the reward that we want to give them. So we are going to interact to external services that will calculate those rewards, and then we will just deliver those rewards to the winners. So basically what we are doing with this, we are defining the behavior of what the marketing campaign is and what do we need to do with this. Again, there is no implementation detail. You can share these diagrams that explicitly say what the campaign is doing and how to react to different content with the business stakeholders, and they should be able to understand this. But then the how do we implement this? It's a little bit more technical, and this is where all the Activiti Cloud stuff comes into. So we are going to be defining these campaigns as different building blocks and using the Activiti Cloud building blocks in there. We will have a pool of campaigns that is dynamic. So the main idea is that as soon as you recognize that there is a trending topic about something that is happening here in London, you can say, okay, I want to create a marketing campaign around this topic. So you can quickly deploy this campaign and get it live and start feeding into the data coming from Twitter or from Instagram or whatever. There will be other services that are going to do service-to-service interactions, right? So you have your own company services that do rankings or do rewards. So this campaign will need to do these interactions again in a cloud-native way. So depending on the amount of campaigns that you have is the amount of replicas that you will need to have of these services. And again, the main idea of that campaigns pool is to just explain that these campaigns might be generated in different countries by different departments for different products. So they will all have different scalability requirements. And all the building blocks that we are providing nowadays are built with that concept in mind. Whatever you do, you just put it in there. You can just create new replicas. And the cluster and Kubernetes itself, it's going to be handling those replicas. And if they get killed, they will get started again automatically. Okay, so I have 8 more minutes. So there are some resources here. I just wanted to show you guys a couple of things before we do questions. And I know that this is quite like fast overview about what we are doing, and there are a lot of technologies in there that you are going to probably be looking at some point. So for me, it was more, okay, I will just give you an overview of what's going on in the project, and I will give you some pointers about what's coming on in the project. And if you want to join, you can reach the community, and you can just join us in our GitHub channel as well. So we have the public roadmap. Again, we are open for companies to add things in here that they think that they are relevant. Every time that we meet with different companies, they have different requirements, and we just try to map that into our milestones, and we just try to deal with that every month. And if we can interact with your company in order to provide some of these things, because you probably don't want to maintain the things that are inside our project, we can just collaborate and get stuff done, and then just get stuff out. So we are finishing our February milestone, and we have been doing some research about different technologies and trying to integrate a little more closely with Kubernetes. From our experience working with the Spring Cloud, it's very nice framework. It's very nice set of abstraction layers. But when you move to Kubernetes, then you need to learn and change a lot of things. And getting all those things working, it takes time. So We want to make sure that that's, it's very, very clean for you when you look at it. You just see plain Kubernetes. Again, we are just be working on a little bit on this, blueprint thing that we are doing on March. And again, as I mentioned, we are going to be trying to get the beta version out because we realize that a lot of people, when they look at something that is called early access release or something that is being released every month, they don't want to try it out. And we are reaching to this point where, we believe that our building blocks are just reaching a point where they are mature enough to be consumed, and we want to, get some people started with that and start creating, guides and tutorials to start using this. We are looking again into other communities and into other open source projects to integrate with. We don't want to reinvent anything. We just want to focus on business automation. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to show you one more thing. You can find the example and you can run it in your own environments. You have the README that explains how to run this in Kubernetes, how to run this with Docker Compose, and how to run this with Spring Boot applications, like plain Spring Boot applications as well. And we have what we call the Activiti and Activiti Cloud Developer Guide, which is quite technical, but if you're interested in the project, I totally recommend you to go over the overview section and getting started, and on why we created this project, what are we doing. Sorry, I'm offline. And the main reasons behind the patterns that we're implementing for cloud native applications. Totally recommend you the list of books that we have in there as well if you're interested in these topics. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. I know that it was fast, but feel free to ask questions, and I'm here with Ryan and the guys. So if you have questions, reach out and join our GitHub channel as well. It's called Activiti 7. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, guys. Record time. Questions? Yep.
People doing the same thing in Kubernetes as you're doing in Process Flow.
Yep. Yep. So the Alfresco strategy is now going into AWS, but in order to go into AWS, we are just looking into Kubernetes. That's a very good question. So they are doing some other work. So when you think about content, at least conceptually, that looks more like a database. We have a set of services that are executing stuff. So the behavior is different. And the kind of things that they are doing are a little bit different, but they are going into the same direction. We have an internal team that is called Platform Services, which is the one in charge of all the deployments. So they are doing deployments on Kubernetes. They are defining all these integrations, with security, identity management that they need. And we are sharing all these things. So we are overlapping in there, and we are just finding the ways to work together. But yes. Yeah. Remember that this is the open source thing, more on the innovation side. So they are just coming a little bit on behind, but that's, we are just collaborating. I have calls with them every day, so. Yeah. Any other question? Yep. Giuseppe there? Yep.
So I want to know if there is any project related to the case management. That's a very good question. So we believe that case management is just the intersection between content and processes, and it's a very interesting abstraction that we want to add in our platform. We have some in the community. What's coming? It's just some abstractions and some services around case management, but it will be quite low level, right? So as an integrator, you will need to use those services if you want to. From the enterprise point of view, I think that we will be coming hard with a solution for case management. Yeah, so that's coming in the future. It's not been announced yet, but I think that's coming. Yeah. Any other thing? Well, thank you very much then. Should be here. This one?
It's fine. This one is on. So thank you for coming. There's still beers and pizzas, so we can stay until 9, I think. Beers and pizzas. There's some notebooks, if you like, at the reception. There's still some Alfresco hoodies and bags. So, yeah, thank you for braving the weather and the snow to come.
you.